I slipped my phone into my apron pocket for the third time in the last hour, willing it not to vibrate. Tyler had found my new number somehow. 217 missed calls in the past week. I had stopped counting the voicemails at 50. The Friday night shift at Rossi's Italian Bistro was picking up momentum, tables filling with well-dressed couples celebrating anniversaries, business associates closing deals over wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But I couldn't focus on any of it. Through the tall windows facing Marlborough Street, water streaked down the glass in steady rivulets. The storm had started around 8, turning the city into a blur of headlights and dark umbrellas. I balanced a tray of empty plates against my hip, weaving between tables toward the kitchen. 27 years old, and this was where life had landed me. Not that serving tables was shameful work, but I had wanted different things once. Architecture school, designing homes that families would build memories inside, creating spaces that mattered. 2 years into my degree program before the money ran out, and reality dragged me back to hourly wages and sore legs. "Megan, table 12 needs attention," Franco called from behind the host stand. His thick gray eyebrows pulled together in that way that meant someone important sat waiting. "The gentleman there, he ordered the Barolo Riserva. That means you treat him like royalty, understand?" "Got it, Franco." I smoothed my black uniform shirt and grabbed a fresh notepad. Table 12 sat in the corner of our VIP section, surrounded by exposed brick walls and soft amber lighting designed to make people feel exclusive. The man sitting alone caught my eye immediately, and not because of what he wore, though his tailored charcoal suit probably cost several $1,000s. It was the way he occupied space, completely still, hands folded on the white tablecloth, dark eyes scanning the restaurant with methodical precision. He wasn't looking at the decor. He was assessing exits, watching the door, cataloging every person who entered or left. When I approached his table, those eyes landed on me with uncomfortable intensity. "Good evening, sir. My name is Megan, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with an appetizer? Or would you prefer to see the wine list?" The words came out steady, professional. Years of practice made polite service automatic even when my mind was elsewhere, calculating how many hours until I could go home and check if Tyler was parked outside my building again. "The Barolo Riserva, 2015 vintage, and I'll take the special, whatever the chef recommends tonight." His voice was deep, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. Or at least Italian-American. He didn't look at the menu I extended toward him. "Excellent choice. The special this evening is braised short rib with truffle risotto and roasted vegetables. I'll have that out for you shortly." I wrote down the order, even though I would remember it perfectly. Something about him made me want to appear busy, to have a reason to look away from that penetrating stare. "You seem distracted." It wasn't a question. He leaned back slightly, one hand moving to adjust the cuff of his shirt. No wedding ring, I noticed, but a watch that gleamed silver and expensive in the low light. Boyfriend troubles? The assumption startled me into honesty. Ex-boyfriend, actually. And yes, troubles would be an understatement. Why was I telling this stranger anything? But his tone had been curious, not invasive. Almost concerned. "The dangerous kind of ex?" He tilted his head slightly, studying my face like he was reading a language written there. "The kind that doesn't understand what leave me alone means. I shouldn't be having this conversation. Franco would have my head if he saw me chatting instead of working. I'm sorry, I should put your order in. The kitchen gets backed up if we wait too long." "Go ahead." He waved one hand in dismissal, but his eyes stayed on me a moment longer, before he turned his attention to the window. "And Megan, if it gets worse, there are solutions. Not all of them involve police and paperwork." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and hurried toward the kitchen. Something about the way he had said solutions made my skin prickle. Not threatening exactly, but certain, like he knew things about problems and fixing them that most people didn't. The kitchen was chaos. Chefs calling out orders in Italian and English, steam rising from pots, the sharp smell of garlic and wine reductions filling the air. I clipped the order slip to the wheel and grabbed the Barolo from the wine storage. $250 for a single bottle. I tried not to think about how that would cover my cell phone bill and groceries for 2 weeks. When I returned to table 12 with the wine, the man was typing something on his phone with quick, efficient movements. He looked up when I approached, pocketing the device smoothly. "Your Barolo, sir. Would you like me to pour, or would you prefer to do it yourself?" "You pour. I trust you know how to handle expensive things." Again, that wasn't quite flirtation, but something else. A test, maybe. Seeing if I would react defensively or rise to the challenge. I uncorked the bottle with practiced ease and poured exactly the right amount, watching the dark red liquid swirl in the glass. Enjoy. Your meal will be ready in about 15 minutes. 3 more tables needed clearing. 2 couples wanted dessert menus, and a businessman at table 6 was getting increasingly loud and difficult with my coworker Jessica. I moved through the rhythm of service, refilling water glasses, taking orders, delivering plates. But I couldn't completely shake the awareness that the man at table 12 was still watching. Not constantly, not in a way that felt predatory like Tyler's stares had been. But periodically his gaze would find me across the restaurant, track my movements for a few seconds, then return to his wine or his phone. My own phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was before I looked. Tyler. The message preview made my stomach clench. I know where you work now. We need to talk. I'm coming to see you. No. He couldn't. Not here. Not at work where I had to stay professional and couldn't run. I turned toward the window, scanning the street beyond the rain-soaked glass. And there he was, standing across the street under the awning of a closed shop, staring directly at the restaurant. Directly at me. Tyler's blonde hair was plastered to his forehead from the rain, his jacket soaked through, but he didn't move. Just stood there like some kind of terrible statue, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes locked on the windows. Panic squeezed my chest. How long had he been there? How had he found me? I changed my number, moved apartments, took every precaution I could afford. But Tyler always found ways, always managed to show up, to invade my space, to make it clear that he considered me his regardless of what I wanted. I was heading back toward the kitchen with a tray of dirty dishes when I saw him start crossing the street. Rain and headlights created a surreal backdrop as he wove between cars, his movements deliberate. Coming here. Coming inside. Oh God. He was actually going to walk into the restaurant and cause a scene, and probably get me fired because Franco had a strict policy about personal drama, interfering with service. The tray slipped. I tried to catch it, overcorrected, and watched in horror as 4 plates, 3 wine glasses, and an entire collection of silverware went crashing to the marble floor. The noise cut through the restaurant like a gunshot. Conversations stopped, heads turned. And I just stood there, frozen, staring at the wreckage at my feet, while through the window I could see Tyler reaching for the restaurant's front door. Megan! Franco was already moving toward me, concern and irritation warring on his face. What happened? Are you all right? I couldn't answer. Couldn't move. Tyler pushed through the door, rain dripping from his clothes onto the expensive tile of Rossi's entrance. His eyes found mine immediately, and he smiled. That same smile that used to make me feel special, that now only filled me with dread. He started walking toward me, weaving between tables, ignoring Franco's protests about reservations and proper seating. Megan, baby, we need to talk. You can't keep ignoring me like this. We're meant to be together, you know that. His voice carried across the quiet restaurant. Other diners were staring now, some curious, others uncomfortable with the brewing confrontation. Sir, you need to leave. Franco stepped between us, but Tyler just pushed past him. Not violently, but with enough force to make Franco stumble. My manager was 53, soft around the middle from sampling too much of his own restaurant's cooking. He wasn't going to stop Tyler. I backed up a step, then another, broken plates crunching under my shoes. Tyler kept coming. I'm not leaving without you. You think you can just move and change your number and I'll forget about you? About us? That's not how this works. Someone stood up. The movement was so fluid and controlled that it barely registered, until suddenly there was a body between me and Tyler, the man from table 12. Up close, he was taller than I had realized. At least 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from actual work rather than gym memberships. His dark hair was cut short, styled back from a face that could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and controlled expression. The lady dropped her tray because she saw you. His voice was quiet, conversational even, but it cut through Tyler's momentum like a blade. She's afraid of you. That means you need to leave. Now. Tyler blinked, confused by this new obstacle. Who the hell are you? This doesn't concern you. This is between me and my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, I managed to say, my voice thin but audible. We broke up 4 months ago, Tyler. You need to accept that. I'm not accepting anything. Tyler tried to step around the stranger, but the man shifted smoothly, blocking his path again. Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but you need to mind your own business before you get hurt. The stranger smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Go to my car, he said over his shoulder to me, his eyes never leaving Tyler's face. Black Audi, parked directly in front. I'll handle this. What? Who are you? I looked at Franco, at the other staff members who had stopped working to watch, at Tyler whose face was reddening with anger. I don't understand. The solution to your problem. The stranger reached into his jacket pocket. For one terrible second I thought he was pulling a weapon. But instead he withdrew a set of car keys and tossed them to me without looking. I caught them on instinct. Go, now. Something in his tone made my body move before my brain caught up. I stepped around the broken plates and started toward the door. Tyler lunged for me, or tried to, but the stranger was faster. His hand shot out, gripping Tyler's shoulder with enough force to stop him completely. I heard Tyler grunt in pain. She's leaving. You're not following. The stranger's voice dropped even lower, deadly quiet. Touch her again, and it's the last thing you do. I should have stayed. Should have called the police. Done something rational and legal. But fear and exhaustion, and 4 months of being hunted made me run instead. I pushed through Rossi's front door into the rain, spotted the black Audi immediately, and fumbled with the key fob until it clicked unlocked. The interior smelled like leather and cedar. Expensive. Safe. I locked the doors and sat there shaking, watching through the rain-streaked windshield as shapes moved inside the restaurant. Less than 2 minutes later, the stranger emerged, dragging Tyler behind him. But not through the front door. They came from the side alley, the one where Rossi's kept the dumpsters and had the staff exit. Tyler's face was already bruising, blood running from his nose to mix with the rain. He stumbled, and the stranger hauled him upright with casual strength, saying something I couldn't hear. Then he threw Tyler into the alley properly, out of sight from the street, and followed. I sat in that car for 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours. When the stranger finally came back, there was a small stain of blood on his white shirt cuff, barely visible. He opened the driver's door and slid inside, running one hand through his wet hair. Your problem has been handled. Permanently. He started the engine without looking at me. Tyler Grant won't bother you again. He's currently in the back of a van with associates of mine who are explaining the consequences of stalking. By tomorrow he'll be on a flight to Seattle with clear understanding that returning to this city would be a terminal mistake. What did you do to him? My voice came out hoarse. Nothing he didn't deserve. Nothing he won't recover from. Now he did look at me. Dark brown eyes unreadable in the dim light. My name is Anthony Valentasi. And you're going to tell me your address so I can take you home. Anthony noticed something was wrong before I even knew it myself. Later, he would tell me that he had been watching since I served his wine. Not because I was beautiful or interesting, though he claimed both those things eventually, but because he recognized the signs. The constant checking of exits. The tension in my shoulders every time the door opened. The way my hand kept drifting to my phone like it was a weapon or a lifeline. He said he had learned to read fear, the way other people read books, and that mine was written across my face in a language he understood too well. When the tray slipped from my hands and ceramic shattered across Rossi's expensive marble floor, Anthony was already standing. I was still frozen, staring through the window at Tyler pushing through the rain toward the restaurant entrance. But Anthony had assessed the situation in the span of a heartbeat. The man dripping wet on the sidewalk. My paralyzed terror. The trajectory of the threat. Tyler burst through the front door, trailing water and bringing the smell of rain and cologne that I used to find attractive, but now made my stomach turn. His eyes locked onto me immediately, ignoring Franco's protests about needing a reservation, about proper protocol. He pushed past my manager with the casual dismissal of someone who had never been told no in a way that mattered. Franco stumbled back a step, his face flushing with anger and embarrassment, but he was 53 years old and soft in the middle from years of sampling his own restaurant's food. He wasn't going to physically stop anyone. Megan, baby, we need to talk. Tyler's voice carried across the dining room, drawing stares from couples who had paid good money for a romantic evening that didn't include watching someone's ex-boyfriend crash through social boundaries like they were made of tissue paper. You can't keep ignoring me like this. We're meant to be together, you know that. We're perfect together. I backed up, broken plates crunching under my shoes. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. 4 months of this. 4 months of blocking numbers, changing locks, moving apartments, looking over my shoulder every time I left work. 4 months of Tyler refusing to accept that no meant no, that we were finished, that I would rather be alone forever than spend another minute in his suffocating presence. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." Franco tried again, positioning himself between us, but Tyler just shoved him aside. Not violently enough to knock him down, but with enough force to make it clear that Franco was an obstacle, not an authority. "I'm not leaving without you." Tyler's face was red now, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the collar of his jacket. "You think you can just move and change your number and I'll forget about you? About us? That's not how this works, Megan. You're mine. You've always been mine." Then Anthony was there. I hadn't seen him move, but suddenly he occupied the space between Tyler and me, like a wall made of expensive fabric and controlled violence. Up close, he was taller than I had estimated, at least 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from actual work, rather than gym memberships designed to produce aesthetically pleasing muscles. His suit fit perfectly across his shoulders, tailored to accommodate the breadth of him without appearing bulky. "The lady dropped her tray because she saw you." Anthony's voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it cut through Tyler's momentum like a blade through water. "She's afraid of you. That means you need to leave. Now." Tyler blinked, his anger redirecting toward this new obstacle. "Who the hell are you? This doesn't concern you. This is between me and my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend." I found my voice finally, thin and shaking but audible. "We broke up 4 months ago, Tyler. You need to accept that and leave me alone." "I'm not accepting anything." Tyler tried to step around Anthony, reaching for my arm. "We're going to talk about this like adults, Megan. We're going to fix this." Anthony moved faster than someone his size should have been able to move. His hand shot out, gripping Tyler's wrist hard enough that I saw Tyler wince, his fingers releasing their reaching gesture. "You're not listening," Anthony said, his tone still conversational, still quiet, but with an edge now that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "She said no. That's the end of the conversation. Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but you need to mind your own business before you get hurt." Tyler tried to yank his arm free, but Anthony's grip didn't budge. "This is between me and Megan. We have history. We have a relationship. You're nobody." Anthony smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. It was the smile of a predator who had just been given permission to do what it wanted to do anyway. He released Tyler's wrist and pulled something from his pocket. For a terrible second, I thought it was a gun. But it was just car keys. He tossed them over his shoulder to me without looking, trusting that I would catch them. I did, on instinct. "Go to my car," he said, still not taking his eyes off Tyler. "Black Audi, parked directly in front. I'll handle this." "What? I don't understand. Who are you?" The questions tumbled out of me while my hands clutched his keys, hard enough that the metal bit into my palm. "The solution to your problem." He tilted his head slightly, studying Tyler the way a scientist might study a particularly interesting insect. "Go, now." Something in his voice made my body move before my brain could catch up and analyze the situation. I stepped around the broken plates, around Franco, who was watching everything with wide eyes, around the other diners who had their phones out recording this drama for their social media feeds. I pushed through Rossi's heavy front door into the rain, got soaked in the 3 seconds it took to reach the Audi, and fumbled with the key fob until the locks clicked open. The interior smelled like leather and cedar, expensive and masculine. I locked the doors and sat there shaking, watching through the rain-distorted windshield as shapes moved inside the restaurant. Anthony was talking to Tyler. Tyler was gesturing angrily. Then Anthony gripped Tyler's shoulder and Tyler's mouth opened in what might have been a shout or a gasp of pain. I couldn't tell which. They didn't come out the front door. That registered slowly through my panic. Anthony was walking Tyler somewhere else, out of sight from the main dining room, toward the side alley where Rossi's kept the dumpsters and had the employee exit. I leaned forward, trying to see, but the angle was wrong, and the rain made everything blurry. 7 minutes. I counted them on my phone, watching the numbers change while my heart hammered against my ribs. What was happening in that alley? What was Anthony doing to Tyler? Should I call the police? But what would I say? A stranger was beating up my stalker ex-boyfriend in defense of me? Would they even care? Would it make things worse? Then Anthony emerged from the side alley alone. There was a small stain on his white shirt cuff, dark against the fabric. Blood, probably. His hair was wet from the rain, but otherwise he looked completely composed, like he had just stepped out for a casual conversation, rather than whatever violence had occurred in that alley. He walked to the driver's side of the Audi with unhurried steps and slid inside, bringing the smell of rain with him. Your problem has been handled. Permanently. He started the engine without looking at me, adjusting the heat controls with practiced ease. Tyler Grant won't bother you again. He's currently in the back of a van with associates of mine who are explaining the consequences of stalking. By tomorrow morning, he'll be on a flight to Seattle, with clear understanding that returning to the city would be a terminal mistake for him. What did you do to him? My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Nothing he didn't deserve. Nothing he won't recover from. Now Anthony did look at me. Those dark brown eyes unreadable in the dim light from the dashboard. Broken nose. Possibly cracked ribs. Definitely bruised pride. He'll heal, but he'll remember what happens when he ignores boundaries. My people are very good at making lasting impressions. Your people. I repeated the words slowly, processing their implications. Who are you? My name is Anthony Valentasi. He said it like I should recognize it, like the name itself carried weight and meaning. When I didn't react, something that might have been amusement crossed his face. You don't follow local news, do you? I work double shifts most weeks. I don't have time for news. I was still holding his car keys, even though he had started the engine with a spare set. My hands wouldn't unclench. Are you going to tell me your address? Or am I driving in circles until you feel safe enough to share it? The question jolted me back to reality. I was in a car with a man I didn't know. A man who had just violently assaulted my ex-boyfriend and spoke casually about associates and permanent solutions. Every self-preservation instinct I had should have been screaming at me to get out, to run, to call for help. But Tyler's face flashed through my mind, the obsessive certainty in his eyes when he said I was his, the 4 months of fear and violation of my privacy. And Anthony had made it stop. In 7 minutes, he had done what the police and restraining orders and changing my entire life hadn't been able to accomplish. Westbrook Street, I said quietly. The apartments above the laundromat. Number 3B. Anthony pulled away from the curb smoothly, navigating the rain-slicked streets with the confidence of someone who knew this city intimately. We drove in silence for the first 5 minutes. I watched streetlights blur past, watched other cars with their normal people inside living normal lives, where men didn't drag their stalker exes into alleys and make them disappear into vans. Why did you help me? The question came out before I could stop it. You don't know me. Tyler could have had a weapon. You could have been hurt. Tyler didn't have a weapon. I checked his waistband and jacket pockets while I was restraining him. Anthony took a turn without using his signal, cutting smoothly through traffic. And I helped because I recognized the fear on your face. I've seen it before. On someone I cared about. Someone I failed to protect. Something in his voice made me look at him properly instead of just stealing glances. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel with more force than the easy driving required. This wasn't just about me. This was about something personal, something painful. Who? I asked softly. For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he exhaled slowly, deliberately, like he was releasing something he usually kept locked inside. My sister, Sophia. She was 8 years younger than me. When she was 19, she started dating this guy. Nice enough at first, or so it seemed. Brought her flowers, took her to nice restaurants, said all the right things. By the time we realized what he was, it was too late. My stomach dropped. What happened? He killed her. The words were flat, emotionless, but I could hear the grief underneath them. Carefully controlled, but never absent. They had an argument. He got angry, broke her neck and ran. Took us 3 weeks to find him. What I did to him when we did. He trailed off, shaking his head. That's not something I'm going to share with you. But I'll tell you this. He never hurt anyone else. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, too small for the weight of what he had lost. How long ago? 8 years. She'd be 27 now. Your age, I'd guess. He glanced at me briefly before returning his attention to the road. Every time I see that look, the one you had when Tyler walked in, I see Sophia. Trapped, scared, knowing something is wrong but not knowing how to fix it. So I fix it. When I can. How I can. We were quiet again. But it felt different now. Less like the silence of strangers, and more like the silence of two people who understood pain in ways they wished they didn't. Anthony took another turn, and I recognized the neighborhood. 2 more blocks to my building. You said your name was Valentasi. I turned the name over in my mind, trying to place it. Franco at the restaurant. He acted like he knew you, like he was afraid of you. Why? Franco owes favors to my family. When his youngest son needed surgery 3 years ago, the insurance company denied coverage. Said it was experimental treatment, not medically necessary. The boy was dying. My family covered the cost of the surgery and the hospital stay. In return, Franco provides certain services when we need them. Services. I tested the word. Like what? Like discretion. Like information about who comes into his restaurant and what they discuss. Like allowing me to use his establishment for meetings that require neutral ground. Anthony pulled up in front of my building, an old converted house that had been chopped into 4 apartments, each more cramped than the last. Franco is a good man. He takes care of his family. I respect that. But you scare him. Fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. Anthony put the car in park, but didn't turn off the engine. Franco knows what I am, what I do. He knows that as long as he keeps his word and doesn't betray my trust, his family is safe and his business is protected. That's worth more than not being afraid. I should have been horrified. Should have recognized the threat in those words, the casual acknowledgement of being something dangerous. But instead, I felt a strange kind of relief. Because Anthony was at least honest about what he was. Tyler had pretended to be sweet and loving, right up until the moment he wasn't. Anthony wore his danger on the surface where I could see it and make informed decisions. I need your number. He pulled out his phone, a sleek device that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Not for anything inappropriate, but I need you to be able to contact me if Tyler tries to reach out again, or if anyone else bothers you. Permanent solutions only work as long as the person believes the consequences. Sometimes people need reminders. I hesitated, then rattled off my number. He entered it into his contacts, saving it simply as Megan. Seeing my name in his phone felt intimate in a way I hadn't expected. If you need anything else, he continued, pocketing the phone. Mention my name to Franco. He'll know how to reach me. And if you want to change shifts or take time off from work after tonight, just tell him I approved it. He won't argue. Because you own the restaurant? Because I own the building the restaurant is in, and Franco knows that his lease renewal depends on my goodwill. He said it matter-of-factly, without pride or shame. That's how this works. Everything connects to everything else. Power is just understanding which threads to pull. I sat there for a moment longer, hand on the door handle, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. I had gone from normal Friday night shift to having my stalker ex violently removed by a man who was either a criminal or something close to it. A man who now had my phone number and expected me to call him if I needed help. It was insane. All of it was completely insane. Thank you, I said finally. Because despite the insanity, Anthony had done what no one else had been willing or able to do. For Tyler. For fixing it. You don't have to thank me. He was looking straight ahead through the windshield at my building, at the flickering streetlight that the landlord kept promising to fix. But you're welcome anyway. Be careful, Megan. And call me if anything changes. I got out into the rain, handed his keys through the window, and watched him drive away. The Audi's taillights disappeared around the corner, and I stood there getting soaked, wondering what I had just gotten myself into. Wondering if the cure for Tyler was going to turn out to be worse than the disease. Wondering why part of me hoped Anthony would call, even though I knew he probably wouldn't. He had played hero tonight, fixed my problem out of guilt and memory and his own demons. That didn't mean he wanted anything more from me than the satisfaction of saving someone when he hadn't been able to save his sister. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, unlocked 3 separate locks that had never made me feel safe, and collapsed onto my secondhand couch. My phone buzzed. For a terrible second, I thought it was Tyler. That whatever Anthony had done hadn't worked, that I was right back where I started. But it was a text from an unknown number. Locked your door? Good. Sleep well. You're safe now. Anthony. He was making sure I had gotten inside okay. Making sure I was following basic security. It should have felt invasive. This strange man checking up on me. Instead, it felt like someone actually cared whether I lived or died. And I hadn't felt that way in longer than I wanted to admit. I texted back a simple, "Thank you," and went to bed with my phone clutched in my hand. waiting for Tyler to call and prove that permanent solutions were never really permanent. But he didn't call. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the day after that. For the first time in 4 months, my phone stayed silent in all the right ways, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could stop looking over my shoulder. The Audi's leather seats embraced me like expensive furniture I had no right to be sitting on. Anthony pulled away from my building smoothly, his movements practiced and confident as he navigated the dark streets. Streetlights cast orange halos through the water streaming down the windshield, turning the city into an impressionist painting. I clutched my wet uniform shirt, suddenly aware that I was dripping all over this pristine interior that probably cost more to detail than I made in a month. For the first 5 minutes, neither of us spoke. Anthony's attention stayed fixed on the road, hands positioned at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel like someone who had taken defensive driving courses seriously. His jaw was set, profile sharp against the passing lights. Every few seconds, his eyes would flick to the rearview mirror, checking behind us with the kind of vigilance that suggested paranoia or professional necessity. Maybe both. I watched the city scroll past. Familiar streets I walked every day looked different from inside this car, like I was seeing them from another dimension where people didn't worry about rent or abusive exes, or whether their manager would fire them for causing a scene during the dinner rush. My phone sat silent in my lap. No buzzing, no calls, no text messages saying, "We need to talk," or "I saw you leave with him," or any of the 100 variations Tyler had sent over the past 4 months. "What did you do to him?" The question finally escaped, quieter than I intended. To Tyler. Anthony glanced at me briefly before returning his focus to the road ahead. He took a left turn, heading deeper into my neighborhood where the buildings got shorter and the paint got more chipped. I explained the situation to him, clearly, in terms he couldn't misunderstand. "With your fists." It wasn't really a question. I had seen the blood on his cuff, heard the sounds from inside the restaurant before they disappeared into the alley. Among other communication methods, his tone stayed neutral, conversational even. Tyler Grant has a broken nose, possibly 2 cracked ribs, and bruising that will remind him for the next few weeks what happens when he ignores boundaries. My associates collected him from the alley and are currently driving him to a secure location where they'll reinforce tonight's lesson. Tomorrow morning, he'll be put on a flight to Seattle. He's been made aware that returning to this city would be the last mistake he makes. The casual way he described violence should have terrified me. Maybe it did. Somewhere underneath the exhaustion and relief. But mostly what I felt was a bone-deep gratitude that someone had finally taken Tyler seriously, had treated him like the threat he was, instead of dismissing my fear as dramatic overreaction. Why? I turned in my seat to look at him properly. Why would you do that for a stranger? You could have been hurt. He could have had a knife or a gun. You could have just called the police and let them handle it. The police would have filed a report and told you to get a restraining order, which you probably already have. He said it with the certainty of someone who knew how these situations typically played out. Restraining orders are pieces of paper. They don't stop determined men. They just make victims feel like the system is protecting them when it's not. I tried getting one. The admission felt like failure, even though I knew it wasn't my fault. 3 months ago, the judge said Tyler hadn't made any specific threats, hadn't committed any acts of violence. Following me wasn't illegal. Calling wasn't illegal as long as he wasn't threatening. Showing up at my work wasn't illegal because it's a public place. Everything he did walked the line just carefully enough that legally he was protected and I wasn't. Anthony's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white for a moment, before he deliberately relaxed them. The law is useful for many things. Protecting women from men like Tyler isn't one of them. Not until after those men have already done something violent. By then, it's too late. That sounds like experience talking. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't respond. We passed 3 more blocks, turned onto Westbrook Street, where my building waited with its flickering streetlight and cracked sidewalk. Then he pulled over to the curb, but didn't put the car in park, engine still running while he stared straight ahead through the windshield. I had a sister. His voice had changed, gone softer, but also harder somehow, like he was forcing the words through a throat that didn't want to release them. Sophia, 8 years younger than me. When I was 26 and building my business, she was 18 and thought she was in love. My chest tightened. I already knew where this was going. Could hear the past tense in how he spoke about her. Could see the grief etched into the tense line of his shoulders. His name was David Mercado. Seemed like a decent guy at first. Brought her flowers, took her to nice restaurants, said all the right things about respecting her and wanting to build a future together. By the time any of us realized what he really was, Sophia was already trapped. Anthony's jaw clenched, released, clenched again. He isolated her from her friends, convinced her that our family didn't understand their relationship, made her dependent on him emotionally and financially. The classic pattern, but we didn't see it happening. Or I didn't. I was too busy with work, with establishing territory, with all the things I thought were important. I didn't say anything. Sometimes the kindest thing you can offer someone is silence to fill however they need to. She tried to leave him, 3 times that I know of. Each time he'd show up wherever she was staying, crying and apologizing and promising to change. Each time she believed him, because she was 19, and wanted to believe that love could fix broken people. His voice had gone flat now, emotionless in the way that meant he was feeling too much to let any of it show. The 4th time she tried to leave, he killed her. They had an argument in his apartment. He pushed her. She fell wrong, broke her neck on the corner of a table. Oh, God. The words came out breathless. Anthony, I'm so sorry. He ran. Disappeared for 3 weeks while we searched every corner of the city and the surrounding counties. Eventually, we found him in a motel 2 states away, drunk and feeling sorry for himself. Anthony's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like baring teeth. What I did to him isn't something I'm going to describe to you, but I'll tell you this. David Mercado never hurt another woman. He never got the chance. I sat with that information, with the implications of what he was telling me without saying directly. Anthony had killed Sophia's murderer, or done something close to it. The man sitting next to me in this expensive car, who had bought wine that cost more than my grocery budget and spoke with educated articulation, was someone who had taken another person's life with his own hands. How old was she? I asked quietly. When she died. 19. She should be 27 now. Your age, if I'm guessing right. He finally turned to look at me. Dark brown eyes searching my face for something. Every time I see that look, the one you had when Tyler walked through the door tonight, I see Sophia. Trapped. Terrified. Knowing something is fundamentally wrong but not knowing how to fix it. So I fix it when I can. However I can. It doesn't bring her back, doesn't make up for failing to protect her when she needed me. But it's what I can do. Understanding settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't about me at all. Or not primarily. I was a stand-in for the sister he couldn't save, a second chance to do what he wished he had done 8 years ago. It should have felt impersonal, like being cast in someone else's unresolved trauma. Instead, it felt painfully honest. This man admitting his motivations without trying to dress them up as pure altruism. Thank you for telling me. I reached across the console and touched his arm gently, briefly. About Sophia. And I'm sorry that happened to her. To your family. That's not something anyone should have to live through. No, it's not. He covered my hand with his for just a second. The contact warm and solid, before pulling away and putting the car in park. But we live through what we have to. And then we make sure other people don't have to live through the same things if we can prevent it. We sat there for a moment in comfortable quiet that felt strange, given we had only met 2 hours ago. But trauma had a way of fast-forwarding connections, of stripping away the usual layers of polite small talk and forcing intimacy, whether you were ready for it or not. Tell me about you. Anthony shifted in his seat to face me more directly. Franco said you've worked at Rossi's for about a year. What were you doing before that? Trying to finish school. The words came easier than I expected. Maybe because he had shared something so personal, I felt safe doing the same. I was studying architecture. Made it through 2 years before the money ran out and I had to drop out. Architecture? He said it like he was tasting the word, considering it. That's specific. Not many people know what they want to study that clearly. I've always loved buildings. The way spaces are designed, how they make you feel when you walk into them. Good architecture is like a conversation between the structure and the people inside it. I could hear my own voice warming up, slipping into the passion I used to feel before financial reality crushed it. I wanted to design homes. Not mansions for rich people, just normal houses that families could actually afford. Places where kids would grow up and remember feeling safe and happy. Why did you have to stop? He leaned back against the driver's door, giving me his full attention in a way that felt both intense and strangely comfortable. My parents divorced when I was 15. Dad left and never looked back. Didn't pay child support. Didn't call on birthdays. Just erased us from his life like we were a bad investment he needed to write off. The bitterness in my voice surprised me. I thought I had moved past that particular wound. Mom did her best, but one income isn't enough when you're raising a kid in this city. I worked through high school, saved everything I could, got into the architecture program on partial scholarship. But scholarships don't cover living expenses or books or all the software you need for design work. So you worked while studying. 3 jobs at one point, barely slept. My grades started slipping halfway through sophomore year because I was too exhausted to focus in class. Then Mom got sick, needed surgery, and the medical bills ate through what little savings we had. I took a semester off to work full-time. That semester turned into a year. The year turned into 2. Now here I am, 27 years old, serving pasta to people who probably spend more on one meal than I make in a week. I hadn't meant to sound so bitter. Hadn't meant to dump my entire sob story on a stranger who had already done more than enough by removing Tyler from my life. But Anthony just nodded like he understood, like he didn't judge me for the circumstances that had derailed my plans. "You still draw?" he asked. "Design things? Even if you're not in school?" "Sometimes. On my phone mostly. Or in notebooks when I can afford them. It's not the same as having proper software and the time to really develop ideas, but it keeps the skills from getting too rusty." I shrugged, not sure what good it does at this point. I'm never going to have the money to go back to school. Even if I saved every extra dollar, it would take years to afford even one semester. You could take out loans and add to the debt I already have from the first 2 years. No thank you. I'd rather work as a waitress forever than spend the next 20 years drowning in payments I can't afford. Anthony studied me with that intense focus he had, like he was cataloging information and filing it away for later use. There are other options. Connections. People who owe favors. Ways to get things done that don't involve traditional channels. I don't want charity. The words came out sharper than I intended. Sorry, that's not directed at you. I just mean, I need to do this myself, if I do it at all. Otherwise it doesn't count. I understand, and somehow I believe that he did. Pride is important. Self-reliance is important. But accepting help when it's offered isn't weakness. It's strategy. Before I could respond to that, he was pulling out his phone, typing something quickly. "I need your number. Not for anything inappropriate," he added quickly when he saw my expression. "But I need you to be able to contact me if Tyler tries to reach out again. Permanent solutions only work as long as the person believes in the consequences. Sometimes people need reminders that those consequences are real." I rattled off my number, watching him enter it into his contacts. He saved it simply as Megan Turner, which felt both formal and strangely intimate. Having my full name in the phone of a man who had just confessed to possibly murdering his sister's killer seemed like crossing some invisible line, stepping from one world into another without quite meaning to. "If you need anything else," Anthony continued, pocketing his phone, "mention my name to Franco. He'll know how to reach me. And if you want to take time off from work after tonight, just tell him I approved it. He won't argue." Why wouldn't he argue? Though I already suspected the answer. Because Franco owes my family favors that he can never fully repay. 3 years ago, his youngest son needed surgery. Experimental treatment that the insurance company denied coverage for. Said it wasn't medically necessary, even though the boy was dying. My family covered the surgery, the hospital stay, the rehabilitation. In return, Franco provides certain services when we need them. Services like letting you conduct business in his restaurant, among other things. Franco is a good man. He takes care of his family and keeps his word. I respect that. In return, I make sure his lease stays affordable and his business stays protected. Anthony said it matter-of-factly, like this was just normal relationship dynamics rather than what it obviously was. A power structure built on debt and obligation. You own the building. I own several buildings in this neighborhood. Rossi's happens to be in one of them. He gestured out the window at my apartment building with its peeling paint and crooked front steps. "I don't own this one, but I could find out who does if you're having problems with your landlord." "No. Thank you, but no. I needed to establish boundaries before this went any further, before I became another person owing favors to Anthony Valentasi. I appreciate everything you did tonight. More than I can say. But I need to handle my own life, my own problems. Tyler was different because I couldn't fix that myself. But I can manage my landlord and my job and everything else. Instead of looking offended, Anthony smiled slightly. Good. People who can't stand up for themselves bore me. People who insist on trying even when they're drowning are more interesting. He reached across and opened my door from the inside, the latch clicking smoothly. Go inside. Lock your doors. All of them. And Megan? Yes? If Tyler contacts you, don't respond. Don't engage. Just forward whatever he sends to me and I'll handle it. Men like him see any response, even telling them to go away, as encouragement, as proof that they still matter to you, still occupy space in your thoughts. Silence is more powerful than anger. I nodded, climbing out into air that felt cold after the warmth of the car. My uniform was still damp, clinging uncomfortably as I stood on the sidewalk. Thank you. For everything. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know what else to say. You don't have to thank me. He leaned across the passenger seat to look up at me through the open door. But you're welcome. Be careful. This city isn't as safe as it pretends to be. I'm starting to figure that out. I closed the door and watched him drive away, the Audi's taillights disappearing around the corner like a promise that had been kept, and a threat that remained vigilant. The building's front door stuck like always, requiring me to lift and push at the same time to get it open. The hallway smelled like someone's cooking, garlic and onions and something vaguely burned. I climbed the 2 flights to my apartment, keys already in hand by the time I reached my door. 3 locks. Deadbolt, chain, and handle lock. I had installed them myself after Tyler showed up at my old place uninvited one too many times. Inside, my apartment looked exactly as I had left it that morning. Small, cramped, but mine. Second-hand furniture that didn't match. A kitchen barely big enough for one person. A bathroom where the shower never quite got hot enough. But it was mine. Paid for with my own work. And tonight, for the first time in months, I didn't feel like Tyler could show up and violate that space. My phone buzzed as I was changing into dry clothes. For one terrible second, my heart seized, convinced it was Tyler proving that Anthony's solution hadn't worked, that I was right back where I started. But it was an unknown number. Locked your door? Good. Sleep well. You're safe now. Anthony. Checking up on me, making sure I had gotten inside safely and followed his advice about the locks. It should have felt invasive. This man I barely knew monitoring my movements. Instead, it felt like someone actually cared whether I lived or died, which was a sensation I hadn't experienced in longer than I wanted to admit. I texted back, "Thank you." I did. All 3 locks. His response came seconds later. 3? Smart. Most people only have 1. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to feel different. He was right. Tomorrow did feel different. I woke up Sunday morning and reached for my phone out of habit, bracing myself for the flood of messages and missed calls that had become my new normal over the past 4 months. But the screen showed nothing. No texts. No calls. No voicemails. Just the usual notifications about weather and news that I never bothered reading. Tyler was really gone. I spent the day in a strange state of suspended disbelief, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Tyler to prove that Anthony's permanent solution wasn't permanent at all. But my phone stayed silent. No texts appeared saying he missed me, or needed to talk, or couldn't live without me. No calls came through in the middle of the night. No one stood outside my building watching my windows. By Monday, I started to believe it might actually be real. By Tuesday, the constant tension in my shoulders began to ease. By Wednesday, when I went back to work at Rossi's, Franco pulled me aside before my shift started. "You doing okay, Megan?" His bushy eyebrows pulled together with genuine concern. "After what happened Friday night?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm sorry about the mess, about the scene Tyler caused. I'll pay for the broken plates." "Don't worry about the plates." Franco waved that away like it was nothing. Mr. Valentasi already compensated the restaurant for any disruption. More than compensated, truth be told. But that's not what I'm asking about. You really okay? That man, Tyler, he's not going to come back here? No. I said it with more certainty than I had felt about anything in months. He's not coming back. Anthony made sure of that. Something crossed Franco's face when I said Anthony's name. Not fear exactly, but careful respect. Mr. Valentasi is a powerful man in this city. Good man to have on your side. Dangerous man to have against you. You understand what I'm saying? I think so. Just be careful, Megan. Men like him, they don't do things without reasons, without expecting something in return eventually. I'm not saying he's going to hurt you or demand payment, but in his world, everything is a transaction. Everyone owes someone something. Just keep that in mind. I thought about that conversation all through my shift, weighing Franco's warning against my own impressions of Anthony. He had been honest about who he was, what he had done to Tyler, why he had intervened. He hadn't pretended to be a good person or dressed up his violence in noble intentions. He had simply fixed a problem because it reminded him of a problem he hadn't been able to fix 8 years ago. That felt safer somehow than someone who pretended to help selflessly while hiding ulterior motives. At least with Anthony, I knew where I stood. He had told me his demons. Now it was up to me whether I let those demons anywhere near my life again, or accepted Friday night as the anomaly it was, the moment our paths crossed briefly before diverging back to our separate worlds. My phone buzzed during my break. I pulled it out expecting a spam text, but Anthony's name appeared on screen. How was work? Any problems? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. Work was fine. No problems. But standing in Rossi's kitchen eating a rush dinner before heading back to my tables, I realized that my life had fundamentally shifted in ways I was only beginning to understand. Anthony Valentasi had done more than remove Tyler from my immediate vicinity. He had shown me that problems could be solved, that fear didn't have to be a permanent state of being, that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was also the safest one to stand behind. I typed back, "Work is good. No problems. Thank you for asking." His response, "Good. Sleep well tonight. You've earned it." And for the first time in 4 months, I believed that I might actually be able to. 5 days passed without a single text from Tyler. 5 entire days where my phone stayed silent in all the ways that mattered. No blocked calls showing up as unknown. No voicemails rambling about how much he missed me or how I was making a mistake. No social media messages from accounts I didn't recognize but knew were him. Nothing. The absence of harassment felt more unreal than its presence ever had. Monday morning I woke up and actually checked my phone with something other than dread. Still nothing. Tuesday. I went grocery shopping without constantly looking over my shoulder, without that crawling sensation between my shoulder blades that meant someone was watching. By Wednesday, when I returned to Rossi's for my first shift since the incident, I almost believed Anthony had actually solved the problem permanently like he promised. Franco caught me before I could even tie my apron on. He pulled me into his small office behind the kitchen, closing the door with more care than necessary. The space smelled like old receipts and the espresso machine that lived on his desk, constantly brewing thick Italian coffee that he claimed was the only thing keeping him sane after 30 years in the restaurant business. "Megan, sit down for a minute." He gestured to the folding chair across from his desk, settling his considerable bulk into his own chair with a wheeze. "We need to talk about what happened Friday." My stomach clenched. If this is about the broken plates, I'll pay for them. "I'm so sorry about the scene Tyler caused. It won't happen again. The plates are nothing, already taken care of." Franco waved that away like it was meaningless. Mr. Valentasi compensated the restaurant more than generously for any disruption. That's not what concerns me. Then what? He studied me for a long moment. His weathered face creased with something between concern and calculation. "How much do you know about Anthony Valentasi?" "Not much." I shifted in the uncomfortable chair. "He told me his name, that he had a sister who died, that he has associates who took care of Tyler." "Associates." Franco repeated the word with a bitter smile. "That's a polite way to put it. Megan, Anthony Valentasi is the head of one of the most powerful crime families in this city. His father built an empire that Anthony inherited and expanded. The Valentasi family controls the docks, most of the construction contracts, several legitimate businesses that serve as fronts for less legitimate operations. When Anthony Valentasi decides something needs to happen, it happens. When he decides someone needs to disappear, they disappear." The confirmation of what I had already suspected still hit me like cold water. "You're saying he's a criminal. I'm saying he's dangerous." Franco leaned forward, elbows on his cluttered desk. "But I'm also saying that 3 years ago, when my son Paolo needed surgery, when the insurance denied coverage and we were watching him die slowly, the Valentasi family paid for everything. $230,000 in medical bills, just gone. Paid in full. Paolo is 14 now. Healthy. Plays soccer. Drives me crazy with his attitude. He's alive because Anthony Valentasi decided my family deserved help. So you owe him. I owe him everything. The words came out flat. Factual. And that debt will never be fully paid. That's how it works in his world. Everything is transactions. Everyone owes someone. I'm telling you this because I see how you looked at him Friday night. Like he was some kind of hero swooping in to save you. And maybe he was. But heroes in Anthony's world always expect something in return. Maybe not today. Maybe not next month. But eventually. I absorbed that information, turning it over in my mind. He hasn't asked me for anything. Not yet. Franco stood, signaling the conversation was ending. Just be careful, Megan. You're a good kid. You work hard, you don't cause problems. I don't want to see you get pulled into something you can't get out of. Men like Anthony, they don't let people go once they've claimed them. And make no mistake, by defending you Friday night, he claimed you. The words stayed with me through my entire shift. I moved through the familiar motions of taking orders, delivering plates, refilling wine glasses. But my mind kept circling back to Franco's warning. Everything is transactions. Everyone owes someone. Had I traded one form of control for another? Tyler's obsessive stalking for Anthony's protective possession? It was just past 9 when I saw him. Anthony walked through Rossi's front door alone. No bodyguards visible, though I suspected they were nearby. He wore a different suit than Friday. This one charcoal gray that probably cost more than my car was worth back when I still had a car. His dark hair was styled back, and when his eyes found mine across the restaurant, I felt that same jolt of awareness I had Friday night. Franco materialized at the host stand to personally escort Anthony to table 12, the same corner booth where he had sat before, the same table where he had first noticed me, first recognized my fear. I gave him a few minutes to settle before approaching with a menu I already knew he wouldn't look at. Good evening, Mr. Valentasi. I kept my voice professional, trying to ignore how my pulse had picked up. Can I get you started with something to drink? Megan. He said my name like he was tasting it. And please, call me Anthony. Mr. Valentasi makes me feel like my father. His eyes scanned my face with that same intensity from before. How have you been? Any problems? No problems. Actually, it's been the quietest few days I've had in months. I set the menu down even though he wasn't looking at it. Thank you for that. I told you it was handled. He leaned back, completely relaxed in a way that suggested he was comfortable everywhere. Have you heard from Tyler at all? Nothing. Not a single text or call. It's like he vanished completely. Good. That means the message was received clearly. Anthony's gaze drifted to the other tables. The couples dining. The businessmen conducting deals over expensive wine. What time does your shift end? The question caught me off guard. 11. We close at 10:30, but cleanup takes about half an hour. Why? Because I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere other than where you work, where you can actually sit down and eat instead of serving everyone else. He said it casually, but there was intention underneath. If you're interested. I should have said no. Should have remembered Franco's warning about transactions and debts, and getting pulled into worlds I didn't understand. But standing there looking at Anthony, at the man who had ended 4 months of terror with 7 minutes of controlled violence, I found myself nodding. I'd like that. Good. I'll wait. He pulled out his phone, already moving on to whatever business required his attention. Take your time finishing work. I'm patient when it matters. The next 2 hours passed in a strange state of heightened awareness. I was conscious of Anthony's presence the entire time, even when I was on the opposite side of the restaurant. I caught him watching me periodically, not constantly, just occasional glances that felt weighted. At 10:45, I finished my last table, split my tips with the other servers, and changed out of my work shirt into the clean blouse I kept in my locker for exactly these situations. Anthony was waiting by the front entrance, settled in a chair like he owned it. He probably did own it, along with everything else in the building. When I approached, he stood with fluid grace and held the door open. There's a French place 3 blocks from here, he said as we stepped into the cool night air. Small, quiet, excellent food. The owner is a friend. He'll treat us well. Another person who owes you favors? Anthony glanced at me, something that might have been amusement crossing his features. Actually, no. Pierre is just someone I've known since we were teenagers. Sometimes people are friends without obligation attached. We walked in comfortable silence. The streets were quieter at this hour, most businesses closed. Just the occasional car passing and other late-night workers heading home. Anthony walked on the street side of the sidewalk. An old-fashioned gesture that reminded me this man had been raised with certain codes, even if those codes existed alongside violence. The restaurant he led me to was exactly as promised. Small, maybe 12 tables, warm lighting that made everything feel intimate. The owner, a barrel-chested man with a magnificent mustache, greeted Anthony with genuine warmth and rapid French that I couldn't follow. We were seated at a corner table away from the few other diners, menus appearing instantly along with water and bread. "Order whatever you want," Anthony said, finally opening his menu. "Pierre's coq au vin is exceptional, but everything here is worth trying. This is too much." I looked at the prices. Each dish more expensive than my usual grocery budget for an entire week. "I can't let you pay for this. You're not letting me do anything. I invited you. That means I'm paying. If it makes you feel better, consider it an apology for the dramatic way I handled Tyler. You have nothing to apologize for. You did exactly what needed to be done." I studied the menu, trying to focus on food instead of the surreal situation. "The salmon looks good." We ordered, and once the waiter left, Anthony turned his full attention to me. "Tell me about architecture. You said you studied for 2 years. What made you interested in that field?" The question opened something in me that had been closed for a while. I found myself talking about discovering architecture through a school project in middle school, about realizing that spaces could be designed to make people feel certain ways, about wanting to create homes that families would build memories inside instead of just structures that held furniture. Anthony listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was actually paying attention. "Why did you have to stop?" The story came out easier this time. My parents' divorce, my father disappearing from our lives, working multiple jobs while trying to study, my mother's medical bills eating through any savings we managed to accumulate. By the time I finished, our food had arrived, and I was surprised to realize I had been talking for almost 20 minutes. "What about financial aid?" Anthony asked, cutting into his steak with precise movements. "Student loans? Scholarships? Grants? I already have loans from the first 2 years. Adding more debt when I'm not even sure I could finish the degree seems irresponsible." I tasted the salmon, which was indeed exceptional, and scholarships usually go to students fresh out of high school, not 27-year-olds who dropped out years ago. There are other options. Adult continuing education programs, work-study arrangements, people who invest in promising talent. He said it carefully, like he was testing the waters. I appreciate the thought, but I need to do this myself if I do it at all. Taking handouts or owing favors doesn't feel right. Instead of arguing, Anthony nodded. Pride is important. Self-reliance matters. But refusing help when it's genuinely offered isn't strength. Sometimes it's just stubbornness. Maybe. I took another bite, considering. "What about you? Did you always plan to go into the family business?" His expression shifted, became more guarded. "I didn't have much choice. My father expected his sons to follow him. My older brother Michael died when I was 18. Car accident. Though there were rumors it wasn't really an accident. After that, I was the heir. The responsibility fell to me whether I wanted it or not. Did you want it? I wanted Sophia to be safe. I wanted my mother to stop crying herself to sleep. I wanted the people who might have killed Michael to fear our family enough that they wouldn't try again." He met my eyes directly. "So I learned what I needed to learn. Became what I needed to become. And now here I am, 34 years old, running an empire built on violence and money and loyalty bought through fear." The honesty in his voice struck me. "You say that like you regret it. I regret that Sophia died anyway. That all the power I accumulated couldn't save her from one angry man with quick hands." He finished his wine, refilled both our glasses from the bottle. "But I don't regret protecting the people I can protect. Making sure others don't suffer what my family suffered. That has to count for something." We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier than it should have between a waitress and a crime boss. Anthony told me about growing up in the Italian neighborhood, about his grandmother who taught him to cook, about learning early that the world was divided between people who took what they wanted and people who let things be taken from them. I shared more about my dreams of designing houses, about the notebooks full of sketches I still kept, about feeling stuck in a life that wasn't quite what I had planned, but also wasn't entirely terrible. When we finally left the restaurant, Anthony walked me home again. That same protective positioning on the street side of the sidewalk. We stopped in front of my building, the flickering streetlight casting uneven shadows across the cracked pavement. "I'd like to see you again," Anthony said, hands in his pockets, completely at ease. "Not just when I visit Rossi's. Actually take you out properly. If you're interested." I knew I should say no. Knew that getting involved with Anthony Valentasi was walking into complications I couldn't begin to predict. But I also knew that he was the first person in years who had listened to my dreams without dismissing them, who had treated me like someone worth protecting instead of someone to be controlled. "I'm interested," I said, and watched something warm cross his features. "Good. I'll call you." He waited while I unlocked the building door. Didn't leave until I was safely inside. Through the glass, I could see him standing there, hands still in his pockets, watching to make sure I made it up the stairs. My phone buzzed before I even reached my apartment. Anthony's text was simple. "Thank you for tonight. Sleep well." I saved his number under his full name, stared at it for a long moment, and wondered what exactly I was getting myself into. Whatever it was, I realized I wanted to find out. 2 weeks slipped by faster than I expected. Anthony called the day after our French dinner, asking if I was free Thursday, then Saturday, then the following Tuesday. Each time we met felt like peeling back another layer of who he really was beneath the tailored suits and controlled violence. Thursday, he took me to an art gallery opening in the financial district. I felt out of place immediately, surrounded by people in designer clothes discussing pieces that cost more than my annual salary. But Anthony stayed close, his hand occasionally finding the small of my back as he introduced me simply as Megan, never explaining who I was or why I mattered. The gallery owner treated him with the same careful respect Franco showed. That mixture of genuine warmth and underlying awareness that this was someone you didn't cross. We stood in front of an abstract painting, all violent reds and blacks. When his phone rang, Anthony glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Excuse me for a moment." He stepped away to take the call, and I watched his entire demeanor change. The relaxed man who had been explaining his surprisingly deep knowledge of modern art disappeared, replaced by someone colder, sharper. His voice dropped too low for me to hear words, but the tone carried across the gallery floor. Command. Authority. The kind of voice that expected immediate obedience. When he returned 2 minutes later, the warmth came back like he was putting on a familiar mask. "Sorry about that. Work issue." "What kind of work requires that tone of voice?" I asked quietly. "The kind where people's lives depend on following instructions exactly." He said it without apology or explanation, just flat honesty. "Do you want to leave? We can get coffee somewhere quieter." We ended up in a small cafe 3 blocks away, tucked into a booth at the back where Anthony could see the entrance and exits. I was starting to notice that pattern. He never sat with his back to doors. Always positioned himself where he could observe everyone coming and going. Always kept his phone face up on the table, checking it with a frequency that suggested constant monitoring of situations I couldn't see. "Does it ever stop?" I asked, watching him glance at his phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "Being vigilant?" "Not really." He pocketed the device, giving me his full attention. "Survival in my world means staying 3 steps ahead of everyone who wants what you have or wants you gone. You relax, you die. Or worse, people you care about die. That sounds exhausting." It is. For a moment, something weary crossed his face, making him look older than 34. "But it's also all I know. I've been doing this since I was 18. Vigilance becomes habit. Habit becomes reflex. Eventually, you can't turn it off even when you want to." Saturday's date was dinner at an Italian restaurant on the waterfront. Anthony knew the owner, an elderly woman named Rosa, who kissed both his cheeks and called him Piccolo, despite him being at least a foot taller than her. She seated us at a private table on the patio overlooking the harbor, where boat lights reflected off black water, and the sound of waves provided background music. Halfway through our meal, I noticed the man at the bar. He had been watching our table for the past 10 minutes, his attention too focused to be casual interest. When he started to stand, moving in our direction, I felt my stomach clench with old fear. But before I could say anything, Anthony's hand moved to rest on the table, visible and relaxed, while his eyes tracked the approaching man with predatory awareness. The man stopped 3 feet from our table, hands carefully visible and empty. Mr. Valentasi. Apologies for the interruption. Mr. Caruso wanted me to pass along his regards and confirm the Thursday meeting is still scheduled. Tell Caruso it's confirmed. 2 o'clock, usual location. And tell him next time he can call, instead of sending people to my dinner. Anthony's voice stayed pleasant, but the warning underneath was unmistakable. Understood. Understood. My apologies again. The man retreated quickly, disappearing into the restaurant interior. I waited until he was gone before asking, "Does that happen often?" "More than I'd like. Less than it used to." Anthony returned his attention to his food, like the interruption was completely normal. People in my business prefer face-to-face communication for sensitive matters. Phones can be tapped. Messages can be intercepted. A person showing up where you are is harder to fake. And you weren't worried he might be a threat? I noticed him when we sat down. Watched him for the past 15 minutes. He moved like someone carrying a message, not a weapon. And besides, he gestured subtly toward the parking lot. I have 2 men positioned with sightlines to this table. If he had tried anything, they would have handled it before he got close. I looked where he indicated, and saw a black SUV parked with clear view of the patio. Inside, barely visible, was the shape of someone watching. "You brought bodyguards to dinner." "I bring bodyguards everywhere. You just don't usually see them because they're good at staying invisible." He said it matter-of-factly, like this was completely normal dating behavior. "Does that bother you?" Invisible didn't mean imaginary. He had a rotation. Different drivers, different cars, the same rules. They never walked me to the door, never hovered in the hallway, never made me explain myself to my own life. Presence without pressure. I could live with that. It should have. Normal people didn't need armed guards for dinner dates. Normal people didn't have associates interrupting romantic evenings with business communications. But I was starting to realize that my definition of normal had been permanently altered the moment Anthony dragged Tyler into that alley. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "Ask me again in a few weeks." Tuesday, he picked me up after my shift at Rossi's, this time suggesting we just drive. No destination, no plan, just moving through the city while we talked. He asked about my mother, about what had caused her medical crisis that derailed my education. I told him about the emergency surgery, the complications that required extended hospital stays, the insurance company fighting every claim. "She's better now," I explained, watching streetlights blur past the window. "Lives in Arizona with her sister. The dry climate is easier on her lungs. We talk maybe once a month, mostly about nothing important. Our relationship never quite recovered after Dad left. I think she blamed me somehow. Like if I had been different, he would have stayed. That's not how that works." Anthony took a turn without signaling. That aggressive confidence that suggested traffic laws were suggestions. Parents who leave aren't running from their children. They're running from responsibility, from the work it takes to be decent human beings. Your father leaving says everything about him, and nothing about you. The certainty in his voice made my throat tight. "You sound like you speak from experience." My father was many things. Loving wasn't one of them. Anthony's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He built an empire, but he destroyed his family doing it. My mother died when I was 23. The doctors said it was heart failure. I think it was heartbreak. 30 years married to a man who treated her like property, like another asset to be managed. Michael's death broke her. My father barely acknowledged her grief. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm telling you this so you understand something important." He pulled over into an empty parking lot overlooking the water, putting the car in park and turning to face me fully. "My world is violent and complicated and morally questionable at best. The people in it don't operate by normal rules. They hurt each other, use each other, dispose of each other when convenient. That's what I grew up watching. That's what I became part of. But I'm telling you right now, if you decide this is something you want, something real between us, I won't treat you that way. I won't use you, or discard you, or make you feel like you're convenient until you're not." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I like you, Megan. More than I've liked anyone in years. And before this goes any further, you need to understand what being with me means." He reached across the console, taking my hand in his. "It means people will watch you to get to me. It means rivals might try to use you as leverage. It means there will be nights I come home with blood on my clothes. And you can't ask whose blood it is. It means living with secrets and dangers that most people never have to think about. You're trying to scare me away. I'm trying to be honest with you. Because if we do this, really do this, I need you to choose it with full knowledge of what you're choosing. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture almost absent-minded. I can protect you from a lot of things. I can make sure Tyler never bothers you again. I can keep rivals from touching you. I can provide security and resources and power, but I can't protect you from the reality of who I am and what I do. That's something you have to accept or walk away from. I sat with that for a long moment, watching boats move across the distant water, their lights creating trails of gold on black waves. Everything he said was true. Everything he offered came with costs I couldn't fully calculate yet, but I also knew that in the 2 weeks since Tyler disappeared, I had felt more alive than I had in years, more seen, more valued. What if I want to keep seeing where this goes? I asked quietly. What if I'm not ready to walk away yet? Something in Anthony's expression gentled, became vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. Then, I'll do everything in my power to make sure you don't regret that choice. He leaned across the console slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. But I didn't want to. His lips met mine carefully, testing, asking permission even as he took it. The kiss started gentle, almost hesitant, before deepening into something that made my breath catch and my hands find his shoulders, pulling him closer, despite the awkward angle and the gear shift between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Anthony rested his forehead against mine. I've been wanting to do that since the moment you smiled at me in that French restaurant. Why didn't you? Because I needed you to understand first. Needed you to have all the information before I complicated things further. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing across my lower lip. This isn't casual for me, Megan. I don't do casual. If we keep going down this path, I'm going to want all of you. Your time, your attention, your trust. That's how I'm built. All or nothing. That should scare me more than it does. I leaned into his touch, feeling the calluses on his palm that suggested his hands did more than sign documents and make phone calls. What if I'm not ready for all or nothing? What if I need time to figure this out? Then we take time. I'm patient when it matters. He kissed me again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. But I'm also possessive and protective and probably going to drive you crazy with both. Fair warning. Noted. I smiled against his lips, feeling lighter than I had in months, despite the weight of everything he'd told me. Take me home? We drove back in comfortable silence, his hand finding mine across the console and staying there. When we reached my building, he walked me to the door like he always did, waiting while I fumbled with keys and trying not to think about how much I wanted to invite him up. But it was too soon, too much, too complicated. Thursday? He asked, hands in his pockets, looking almost uncertain in a way that made him seem younger. There's a charity gala my family sponsors. I have to make an appearance. I'd like you to come with me if you're comfortable with that. A gala. Like with fancy dresses and important people? Exactly like that. But I'll have a dress delivered to you. Don't argue, he added when I opened my mouth to protest. It's not charity. It's necessity. The event has a dress code I'm asking you to attend. That means I provide what's needed to make you comfortable there. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could handle my own wardrobe. But the reality was I didn't own anything appropriate for a charity gala, and buying something would eat up money I needed for rent. Okay, but nothing too expensive. And I'm only agreeing because you phrased it as necessity, not generosity. Deal. He kissed me once more. Quick and possessive. Lock your doors. Text me when you're inside. I watched him walk back to his car, marveling at how quickly this had become normal. The bodyguards in the SUV that followed him everywhere, the constant phone calls and careful positioning, the casual mentions of violence and territory and business that operated outside legal boundaries. 2 weeks ago, I had been terrified of Tyler. Now I was falling for someone infinitely more dangerous. And the terrifying part was how right it felt. My phone buzzed before I even reached my apartment. Anthony. Home safe? Me. All 3 locks secured. Good night. Anthony. Dream well, Megan. I'll see you Thursday. I lay in bed that night thinking about his warning, about choosing this with full knowledge of consequences. But I also thought about the way he kissed me. The vulnerability in his eyes when he admitted being possessive and protective. The honest acknowledgement that his world was dangerous, but his feelings were real. Franco's warning echoed in my head. Everyone owes someone. Everything is transactions. But Anthony had been clear about costs and honest about risks. That felt like the opposite of Tyler's manipulation, the opposite of my father's abandonment. It felt like someone giving me power to make informed choices instead of trapping me in situations I didn't understand until too late. I fell asleep still tasting cedar and expensive cologne, still feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, still wondering where this path led but willing to keep walking it to find out. The parking lot behind Rossi's was darker than usual. 2 of the overhead lights had burned out weeks ago, and the landlord kept promising to fix them without ever following through. I walked out the employee exit at 11:13, exhausted from a Tuesday night shift that had somehow been busier than most weekends. My phone showed a text from Anthony sent 3 hours earlier. Dealing with business at the port, probably won't finish until late. Call if you need anything. I had typed back that I was fine, that I didn't need constant checking in. Now, standing in the poorly lit parking lot with my keys already gripped between my fingers the way women are taught for self-defense, I wished I had taken him up on the offer of a driver. The gray sedan sat 3 spaces from my car. 2 men inside, not even trying to hide their surveillance. The one in the passenger seat was looking directly at me, phone pressed to his ear. Not Tyler. These men were different. Professional. The kind of dangerous that came with training rather than obsession. Every survival instinct I had developed over 4 months of being stalked by Tyler screamed at me to move. I spun on my heel and went straight back inside, nearly running into Franco, who was counting the cash drawer at the bar. Megan, what's wrong? He looked up from the bills, concern immediate in his weathered face. There's a car in the lot. 2 men watching. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, scrolling for Anthony's number. They're not trying to hide it. Something's wrong. Franco's expression went from concern to grim. He moved to the window, peering through the blinds carefully. Gray sedan. Virginia plates. Stay inside. Lock the back door. I was already calling Anthony. He picked up on the first ring, his voice sharp with alertness despite the late hour. Megan, what happened? I'm still at Rossi's. There's a car in the parking lot with 2 men inside. They've been watching the building. Franco saw them too. He thinks something's wrong. The words tumbled out faster than I intended, fear making my voice thin. Gray sedan? 2 men? One on a phone? The background noise on his end suggested he was in a car, moving fast. Yes. How did you know? Because they've been following my movements all week. I noticed them yesterday. Thought I had shaken them. I heard him speak to someone else in Italian, rapid commands that I couldn't follow. Then back to me. Listen carefully. Stay inside with Franco. Lock both doors, front and back. I'm 40 minutes away at the port, but I'm sending Lucas Pellegrini and a security team. They'll be there in 10 minutes. Do not leave that building until Lucas arrives. Understand? Anthony. Who are they? Rivals. Russians working for a man named Volkov. They saw us together. Think they can use you to get to me. Another exchange in Italian. Then the sound of an engine revving. 10 minutes, Megan. Lucas will take care of you until I get there. I promise. The call ended. I stood there holding my phone, trying to process what he had just said. Rivals. Russians. Use you to get to me. This was what Anthony had warned me about 2 weeks ago. The reality of being associated with someone in his world. People would watch me. Might try to use me as leverage. Franco was already on his own phone, speaking low Italian to someone. When he hung up, he locked the front door and turned off the exterior lights, leaving only the soft interior glow from behind the bar. My cousin works for the Valentasi family. He's coming too. Should be here in 15 minutes. I'm sorry, Franco. I didn't mean to bring this to your restaurant. Not your fault. He moved behind the bar, pulling out a baseball bat that he kept under the register. Mr. Valentasi takes care of his people. You're his people now. That means you're protected, but it also means you're a target. You understand that, right? I nodded, sinking onto a bar stool while my legs still worked. Through the window, I could see the sedan hadn't moved. The passenger was still on his phone, occasionally glancing toward the restaurant. What were they waiting for? Were they just surveillance or something worse? Time moved strangely. Each minute felt like 10, but also like seconds were slipping away too fast. I counted my breaths, tried to stay calm, Checked my phone compulsively even though only 2 minutes had passed since Anthony's call. At minute 8, I heard the vehicles. Multiple engines, moving fast. 2 black SUVs pulled into the lot from opposite directions, boxing in the gray sedan smoothly. The doors opened simultaneously, and men emerged wearing dark suits and the kind of alertness that suggested military or law enforcement backgrounds. One of them approached the restaurant entrance, knocking precisely 3 times. Franco checked through the window, then unlocked the door. Lucas Pellegrini? Yes. Where's Megan Turner? The man who entered was maybe 32, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. He scanned the restaurant interior in seconds, cataloging exits and threats with practiced efficiency. I'm Megan. I stood from the bar stool, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. Lucas crossed the space between us in 3 strides, his expression serious, but not unkind. Anthony sent me. You're safe now. The men in the sedan are leaving. He gestured toward the window where the gray car was indeed pulling out of the lot, heading away fast. My team encouraged them to find somewhere else to be tonight. Who are they? Russian operatives. Low-level surveillance. Probably gathering information about your routines and connections to Anthony. Lucas pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. They're not the real threat. They're just the eyes. The threat is who they report to. Franco offered Lucas a glass of water, which he declined with a polite shake of his head. How long until Mr. Valentassi arrives? Lucas checked his watch. He was at the port when Megan called. That's about 40 minutes from here. He left immediately, so probably another 35 minutes. And those men won't come back. Not tonight. We made it clear that would be a terminal mistake. Lucas said it calmly, but the implication was unmistakable. Whatever his team had communicated to the Russians involved serious consequences. We waited. Lucas positioned himself near the window, occasionally speaking into his phone in low tones. 2 of his men stayed outside by the SUVs, constantly scanning the street. The remaining team member stood by the back entrance. The restaurant felt more like a fortress than a place that served pasta and wine. 37 minutes after my initial call, Anthony's Audi pulled up outside. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, striding toward the entrance with barely controlled urgency. Lucas opened the door for him. Anthony's eyes found me immediately, scanning me head to toe like he was checking for injuries. You're okay? I'm fine. Scared, but fine. I stood, and he closed the distance between us in 2 steps, pulling me into an embrace that was more about reassurance than romance. I could feel his heart hammering against his chest, could feel the tension in every muscle. Lucas, report. He didn't let go of me, just held me against him while he listened to his second-in-command. 2 men, gray Nissan sedan, Virginia plates. They matched the description of operatives we've been tracking all week, associated with Volkov's organization. When my team arrived, they attempted to leave. We intercepted them briefly to deliver a message, then let them go. They won't return to this location. What message? I asked quietly. Lucas glanced at Anthony before answering. That Megan Turner is under the protection of the Valentassi family. That any attempt to surveil, approach, or threaten her would be met with immediate and overwhelming retaliation. Anthony finally released me, though he kept one hand on my shoulder. Volkov has been pushing boundaries for months. 3 weeks ago, we intercepted one of his shipments at the port. Cost him significant money and credibility. He's been looking for retaliation ever since, and he thinks I'm an easy target because you've been seen with me. Yes, Anthony's jaw clenched. This is my fault. I should have been more careful about being seen with you publicly. Should have anticipated that rivals would notice and try to exploit it. You warned me this would happen. 2 weeks ago you told me people might try to use me as leverage. I touched his arm, making him look at me instead of Lucas. I chose to keep seeing you knowing that. This isn't your fault. It's absolutely my fault. The anguish in his voice surprised me. You're in danger because of me, because I was selfish enough to want you in my life despite knowing the risks. Lucas cleared his throat gently. Anthony, we should move. This location is compromised. The Russians know she works here, which means they know her patterns and vulnerabilities. Anthony nodded, already shifting back into command mode. Franco, thank you for keeping her safe. You'll be compensated for closing early tonight, and I'll have additional security posted outside the restaurant for the next few weeks. just as precaution. Not necessary, Mr. Valentasi. Just take care of her. Franco looked at me with genuine concern. Be safe, Megan. Come back when things calm down. Anthony turned back to me, his expression intense. I need you to come with me. Somewhere secure where Volkov's people can't reach you. Not your apartment. They likely know that location already. I have safe houses set up for exactly these situations. For how long? However long it takes to resolve this situation with Volkov. Could be a few days. Could be longer. He paused, and I could see him choosing his next words carefully. I'm not forcing you. I'm asking. Will you trust me enough to let me protect you while I handle this? This was the moment Franco had warned me about. The moment where Anthony's world stopped being theoretical danger and became immediate reality. I could refuse. Could go home to my apartment and hope the Russians wouldn't escalate beyond surveillance. Could pretend that being associated with Anthony Valentasi didn't make me a target. Or I could accept that I had chosen this path with full knowledge of where it led. Could trust the man who had eliminated Tyler from my life, who had been honest about risks and costs, who was now offering protection not as control, but as genuine care. I trust you. The words came out steadier than I expected. Where are we going? Relief flooded Anthony's features so completely it made him look younger. I have 2 locations. An apartment in the city, about 15 minutes from here. It's secure but designed for short-term situations. And a house outside the city, about 40 minutes away. More isolated, better security, more comfortable for extended stays. He watched my face as he explained the options. I recommend the house, and I'll stay with you. I'm not leaving you alone to deal with this. The house, then. I grabbed my purse from where I had set it by the bar. Do I have time to stop by my apartment for clothes? No, too risky. They might be watching your building. I'll have someone collect what you need tomorrow, or we can buy new things. Whatever you're comfortable with. Anthony's hand found the small of my back, guiding me toward the door. Lucas, take point. Radio ahead to the house. Make sure everything is ready. Already done. Carson and his team are en route to secure the perimeter. Lucas was already moving, phone to his ear, coordinating with military precision. The drive took exactly 40 minutes. Anthony drove while Lucas followed in one of the SUVs, creating a 2-vehicle convoy that felt simultaneously protected and surreal. We left the city behind, heading into areas where houses spread out across acres instead of being crammed together, where streetlights gave way to darkness interrupted only by occasional porch lights. Tell me about Volkov. I broke the silence after 20 minutes. If I'm running from him, I should understand who he is. Anthony's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Dmitry Volkov runs the Russian organization that controls most of the drug trafficking through the northern port. He's been in this city for about 5 years, aggressive about expanding territory. 3 weeks ago, his people tried to bring in a shipment through docks I control. My team intercepted it. Cost him roughly $3 million in product, and made him look weak to his own organization. So this is retaliation. This is him looking for leverage. He can't attack me directly without starting a war he'll lose. But if he has someone I care about, he thinks he can force me to give back territory, or money, or power. Anthony glanced at me briefly. Which is why you need to stay hidden until I make it clear that path is closed to him. How do you make that clear? By being willing to pay a higher price than he's willing to pay. By making sure he understands that touching you would cost him everything, while giving him an alternative path that saves face and preserves his position. He turned onto a private road, unmarked and barely visible. It's about finding the pressure points where he'll negotiate instead of escalate. The house appeared through the trees. Modern architecture with large windows and clean lines. Lights were already on inside, and I could see 2 men patrolling the perimeter with the kind of alert posture that suggested they were armed and ready. Anthony parked close to the entrance, coming around to open my door before I could do it myself. Welcome to the safest place in 100 miles. The security system is military grade. The perimeter is monitored by cameras and personnel. Nothing gets within 500 yards without us knowing about it. Inside was surprisingly comfortable. Not the fortress I had expected. Warm wood floors, furniture that looked lived in rather than sterile, a kitchen that actually seemed used. Anthony led me through a tour, showing me where everything was, how the security system worked, where the panic buttons were hidden if I needed help fast. Guest room is here. He opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with windows overlooking dark woods. My room is across the hall. You have complete privacy, but I'm close if you need anything. I stood in the doorway, taking it all in. 24 hours ago, I had been worried about making rent. Now I was hiding from Russian mobsters in a safe house with military-grade security. The whiplash of it all finally caught up with me, and I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "Hey," Anthony's voice gentled, and then his arms were around me again, solid and warm. "You're safe here. I promise you're safe. I know. I believe you." I pressed my face against his chest, breathing in cedar and the faint smell of gunpowder that suggested he had been handling weapons recently. "I'm just overwhelmed. This is a lot." "It is. And I'm sorry for dragging you into it." His hand stroked my hair, the gesture tender in ways I hadn't expected from someone capable of the violence he represented. "But we'll handle it. Together. And when this is over, you'll go back to your life, and I'll make sure Volkov never looks in your direction again." I pulled back enough to see his face. "What if I don't want to go back to my life exactly as it was? What if I want you in it?" Something vulnerable crossed his expression, hope mixed with fear. "Then we'll figure that out too. But first we survive this. Deal?" "Deal." I managed a weak smile. "Do you have food here? I'm starving and exhausted and not sure which need to address first. Kitchen is fully stocked. Let me make you something while you get cleaned up. There should be clothes in the dresser that will fit well enough for tonight." He kissed my forehead gently. "We're going to be okay, Megan. I'll make sure of it." Watching him walk toward the kitchen, seeing the way he moved even here with perfect vigilance, I realized that I believed him. This dangerous man who had entered my life 3 weeks ago had become the person I trusted most to keep me alive. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I was too tired to analyze it further. I took the offered shower, changed into borrowed clothes that were indeed close enough to my size, and emerged to find Anthony had made pasta from scratch. We ate mostly in silence, exhaustion and stress making conversation difficult, but his presence across the table from me, solid and protective, made the terror of the evening finally begin to recede. "Get some sleep," he said when we finished. "Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. Tonight you just need to rest." I wanted to argue, wanted to stay up and discuss strategy, and understand exactly what resolving the situation with Volkov would cost. But my body had other ideas, practically dragging me toward the guest room. Anthony walked me to the door, waited while I turned on lights and checked that everything was secure. "I'll be right across the hall," he reminded me. "If you need anything, just knock or text. I'll have my phone on. Thank you for all of this, for keeping me safe." I touched his hand briefly, a connection that felt necessary. "I know this is complicated and dangerous, and probably more trouble than I'm worth. You're worth it." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. "Sleep well, Megan. Tomorrow we start fixing this." I closed the door and collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, too exhausted to change. My last thought before sleep claimed me was that somewhere out there, Russian mobsters were planning their next move. But inside these walls, with Anthony Valentasi standing guard, I felt safer than I had in months. Maybe safer than I had ever felt in my entire life. 3 days in isolation changed everything between us. The first morning I woke disoriented, forgetting briefly where I was until I saw the unfamiliar ceiling and heard Anthony's voice drifting from somewhere in the house, speaking Italian in that low, authoritative tone he used for business. I found him in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, making espresso with one hand while conducting what sounded like a negotiation with the other. When he saw me, his expression softened immediately. He ended the call within 30 seconds. "Coffee?" He held up the small cup, steam rising from dark liquid that smelled like it cost more per ounce than my usual grocery store brand. "Please." I accepted it, wrapping both hands around the warmth. "How long have you been awake?" "Since 5. Couldn't sleep." He started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator, moving with surprising ease in the kitchen. "I thought I'd make breakfast. Do you like omelets?" Watching Anthony Valentasi crack eggs and chop vegetables with the same focused precision he probably applied to running criminal operations was surreal. His hands moved efficiently, no wasted motion. When I asked where he learned to cook, he smiled slightly. "My grandmother. She insisted all her grandchildren know how to feed themselves properly. Said a man who couldn't cook was a man who'd starve or become dependent on others, and Valentasis don't do dependent." He whisked the eggs with quick strokes. Sophia loved cooking too. She wanted to open a restaurant someday. The mention of his sister hung in the air between us. "Tell me about her, not how she died." who she was when she was alive. He was quiet for a moment, concentrating on the pan. Then he started talking. And for the next hour, while we cooked and ate together, Anthony shared memories that made Sophia real instead of just a tragedy. Her terrible singing voice, her obsession with fashion magazines, the way she'd leave notes around the house for him when he came home late, little reminders that someone cared whether he ate dinner or remembered to sleep. "She would have liked you," he said finally, rinsing dishes in the sink. "You have that same stubborn independence, that refusal to be saved or fixed by anyone. Is that why you're drawn to me? Because I remind you of her? No." He turned off the water, drying his hands deliberately. "You remind me that good people exist outside my world, that not everything has to be about power and territory and violence. That's completely different." The second day, Lucas called with an update. 2 of Volkov's men had been captured trying to gather more intelligence about my routines. Anthony took the call in his office upstairs, but when he came back down, his jaw was tight with controlled anger. "What did you do to them?" I asked, because I needed to know, needed to understand exactly what protection from Anthony Valentasi meant in practice. "Nothing personally. Lucas is handling interrogation." He poured himself whiskey even though it was barely noon. "They'll tell us what Volkov's planning, what resources he has in play, where his vulnerabilities are. Then we'll use that information to negotiate." Negotiate. That's a kind word for whatever you're actually going to do. Yes, it is. He didn't apologize for the euphemism, or try to soften the reality. "This is how my world works, Megan. I can protect you from seeing the details, but I can't pretend they don't exist." We spent that afternoon in strange companionship. Him working on his laptop while I curled up with a book I found on the shelf. Every so often I'd catch him watching me instead of his screen, expression unreadable. When I fell asleep on the couch, I woke to find a blanket tucked around me, and Anthony sitting in the chair across from me, still watching. "How long have I been out?" I stretched, disoriented. "About an hour. You looked peaceful." "I didn't want to wake you." He set aside his laptop. "Can I show you something?" He pulled up images on his phone. Architectural plans for a development project downtown. "My family has investments in several real estate ventures. This one needs design work, someone creative who understands how to maximize small spaces. Your sketches, the ones you showed me at dinner, they're exactly the kind of thinking this project needs." My throat tightened. "Anthony, I'm not qualified. I only finished 2 years of school. Talent doesn't require degrees. I could connect you with the project manager. No guarantees, but if your work is good, they'll use it. And they pay well. Enough that you could afford to go back to school if you wanted." He watched my face carefully. "This isn't charity. It's opportunity. What you do with it is entirely up to you." The third day, something shifted. We were arguing about what movie to watch. A silly domestic disagreement that somehow escalated into playful provocation. I pushed his shoulder lightly, making some joke about his taste in films. He caught my wrist, pulling me closer with that intensity that made my breath catch. "Megan." My name was a question and a warning. "Anthony." I met his gaze, saw desire and restraint warring in those dark eyes. "If we do this, I need you to be sure. Because once we cross this line, I'm not going back. I'm not good at casual. I'm not built for temporary." His hand slid to my waist, holding me close, but not trapping me. "Tell me you want this." I answered by kissing him, hard and desperate, and done with restraint. His control shattered. We barely made it to his bedroom before clothes started coming off, urgency tempered by his surprising gentleness. He kept checking, kept asking if I was okay, giving me power even as he took what we both wanted. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like him, Anthony traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "You're dangerous for me," he murmured. "People in my position can't afford weaknesses, can't afford to care too much about anything that can be taken away. I'm not a weakness. You're the biggest weakness I've ever had." He kissed my temple. "And I don't care. If caring about you makes me vulnerable, then I'll be vulnerable. That's how much you matter." The fourth morning, Lucas called early. Anthony took it in his office, was gone for almost an hour. When he came back, relief and exhaustion warred on his face. "It's done." Volkov agreed to terms. He sat heavily on the couch beside me. "You're officially off limits. Protected territory. Any move against you means immediate total war with my family, and Volkov can't afford that right now." What did it cost you? He told me everything. The territorial concessions, the lost revenue, about $300,000 annually, the 2 men eliminated during negotiations to prove he was serious. That's too much, I whispered. Anthony, I'm not worth that. He grabbed my face between his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're worth everything. Money I can recover, territory I can win back eventually. But you, Megan Turner, you're irreplaceable. Don't ever tell me you're not worth it. I kissed him then, tasting his certainty and desperation and love, because that's what this was. Complicated, dangerous, built on violence and territory disputes and moral compromises, but love nonetheless. Raw and real and stronger than I'd ever expected to find. What happens now? I asked when we finally broke apart. Now we go back to our lives. You go back to work if you want. Back to your apartment if you want. I'll have security watching you discreetly, just as precaution. And we figure out what this means for us, for our future, without the immediate threat forcing decisions. He smiled slightly. Unless you'd prefer to stay here longer. I could get used to waking up with you. Take me home, I said, to my apartment. And then tomorrow you can take me to dinner like normal people. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Anthony kissed me one more time before standing. Normal people, I can try that. For you, I can try anything. We didn't go back to normal overnight. For a few days, we practiced ordinary things with deliberate care. Quiet dinners without looking over our shoulders, turning off our phones after midnight, sleeping without the lights on. Anthony asked what would make me feel safe that didn't involve more men or more guns, and then he actually did those things. Walked me through the building's exits, showed me the panic buttons once and never again, learned my tells when anxiety crept in. Safety stopped being a performance and became a routine we kept together. 7 weeks later, my life looked completely different, but also strangely normal. I had moved into an apartment 2 floors below Anthony's penthouse in a building he owned downtown. Not living together exactly, but close enough that I could knock on his door at midnight when nightmares woke me. Close enough that he could stop by with coffee before I left for work. I still worked at Rossi's 3 nights a week, but now I also spent my days designing floor plans for a development project Anthony had connected me with. The project manager, a woman named Sarah, who didn't seem to care that I lacked a degree, had hired me after seeing my portfolio. The pay was more than I made in a month of waiting tables. Franco pulled me aside one evening during my shift. You look different, he said, studying my face with those perceptive eyes. Happier. More settled. I am. I wiped down the bar, comfortable in this space that had become familiar. Things are good. Mr. Valentassi is good to you? He is. I met his gaze directly. I know you warned me about his world, about transactions and owing people, but Anthony's been nothing but honest with me. About who he is, what he does, what being with him costs. Franco nodded slowly. My son is 14 now. Healthy. Plays soccer, drives me crazy with his attitude. He's alive because the Valentassi family helped when no one else would. That kind of debt, it never really goes away. But it also means something. Means they take care of their people. He squeezed my shoulder gently. You're his people now. That's worth something in this city. 2 days later, Lucas Pellegrini stopped by the restaurant with an update I had been waiting for. He sat at the bar during a slow afternoon, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and delivered his report with military precision. Tyler Grant is confirmed living in Seattle. He's employed at a car dealership dating someone new. Our monitoring shows no attempts to contact you, no searches for your information. He appears to have genuinely moved on. Lucas watched my face carefully. We'll maintain surveillance for another 3 months as precaution. But the threat seems neutralized. Relief washed through me so completely I had to grip the bar for support. Thank you. For checking. For making sure. Anthony's orders. He wanted you to have certainty. Lucas finished his coffee and left cash on the bar that was triple what the drink cost. Take care, Megan. You're good for him. He's different since you came into his life. Better. I met Gabriella Ricchetti at a charity event Anthony took me to. She was the daughter of an allied family. Someone who understood this world from birth. We ended up talking in a corner, while our respective men conducted business disguised as socializing. How do you handle it? I asked her quietly. Knowing what they do. What they're capable of. She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. You accept that the men we love are complicated. that they can be gentle with us and brutal with enemies, that morality in their world has different rules than the one we were raised in. She touched my arm lightly. But you also set boundaries. Make clear what you will and won't accept. Anthony respects boundaries. Not all of them do. There were difficult moments. The night Anthony came home at 3 a.m. with blood on his shirt that he said wasn't his. The overheard phone call where he ordered something in Italian that included words I recognized as violent. The constant presence of security. The way he never fully relaxed even in our supposedly safe spaces. We fought about it once. Me demanding to know exactly what he had done. Him refusing to give details because he didn't want those images in my head. The argument ended with both of us crying. Me from frustration and fear. Him from the weight of trying to protect me from himself. I can't change what I am, he said, voice rough. Can't undo 34 years of becoming this person. But I can promise I'll never lie to you about it. I'll never pretend to be something cleaner than I am. I don't need you to be clean, I whispered. I need you to be honest. And I need to know that the violence has limits, that you're not just destroying people because you can. We wrote it down, not like a contract but close. No lies about violence, no using me as leverage, no keeping me in the dark if a choice I made could put other people at risk. It wasn't romance the way movies sell it, but it was the only way this could work without either of us pretending to be someone we weren't. I'm not. He pulled me close, burying his face in my hair. Everything I do has purpose. Protection, preservation, maintaining balance. I don't kill for pleasure. I don't hurt people who don't threaten what's mine. Does that make it better? I don't know. But it's the truth. 8 weeks in, Anthony took me to the rooftop of our building. He had set up dinner under string lights, the city spreading out below us in a carpet of illumination. Over wine and pasta he made himself. He talked about the future. I want you in my life permanently, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Not just dating, not just convenient. I want to build something real with you. I understand if you're not ready for that considering everything, but I need you to know my intentions. What would that look like? My heart was racing. Building something real. Whatever we decide it looks like. You keeping your independence and your work. Me supporting your dreams without trying to control them. Both of us accepting what the other is. Complications and all. He traced circles on my palm with his thumb. I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm asking if you can see yourself wanting that eventually. With me. Despite everything. I thought about Tyler. About the 4 months of terror that Anthony had ended in 7 minutes. About the honest way he discussed violence instead of hiding it. About how he talked about Sophia with love and grief and guilt. About the way he supported my architecture dreams without trying to take credit for my success. Yes, I said. I can see that. Eventually. When we're both ready. Relief and joy crossed his face in equal measure. Then that's what we'll work toward. He told me then about the shelters. How he had started funding organizations that helped women escape abusive relationships. That provided safe housing and legal assistance and resources. How he did it anonymously because he didn't want credit. Just wanted to honor Sophia's memory by protecting people the way he hadn't protected her. You're making something good from something terrible, I said, tears in my eyes. That's not nothing, Anthony. That matters. It matters because you made me see it mattered. He kissed my knuckles gently. Before you, I just wanted revenge. After you, I want redemption. Those aren't the same thing. Life settled into new rhythms after that night. I worked on my architecture projects, occasionally picked up shifts at Rossi's because I liked the work and the people. Anthony ran his empire with slightly less ruthlessness, more calculation about necessary versus unnecessary violence. We had dinners with Lucas and Gabriella, learned to navigate social events where half the attendees were criminals. I kept checking on my mother, too. Rides to follow-up appointments, groceries stocked, bills tracked in the same spreadsheet I used for floor plan drafts. Loving Anthony didn't erase where I came from. It only made me more stubborn about not losing the parts of my life that weren't his to manage. Franco told me one afternoon that he saw how we looked at each other, that it reminded him of how he and his wife had been when they were young. Hold on to that, he advised. Life in this world is complicated. Love makes it bearable. Tyler never called, never texted, never appeared in my nightmares anymore. That chapter closed completely, replaced by something infinitely more complex, but also infinitely more real. I stood on our building's rooftop one evening, watching the sun set over the city, and realized I was happy, not despite the complications or the danger or the moral compromises. Just happy. Anthony found me there, wrapping his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How 3 months ago I was terrified of my ex-boyfriend. Now I'm in love with a mafia boss. Life is strange. Strange but good. Strange but very good." I turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for handling Tyler permanently, for being honest about your world, for loving me despite it being dangerous for both of us. Thank you for choosing this anyway." He kissed me softly, for seeing who I am underneath everything and deciding it was worth the risk. We stood there as darkness fell and city lights bloomed below. Two people from completely different worlds who had found something real in the space between danger and safety, violence and gentleness, fear and love. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was honest and complicated and built on full knowledge of what we were choosing. And that made it worth everything.